I want to make some comments. I know there probably are some comments. I'll begin by saying that I know how difficult this subject is. And what I'm trying to get to is looking past perhaps some of the bureaucratic or political veils and get into some physical realities of this situation. And the realities that our physical environment, that where we raise families, where we create a product that is world renowned based on water, clean water. And we have a number of facilities that came into being here in the early 1960s, before the resurgence of the wine industry, before the Napa County was tied into the Bay Area and Bay Area housing prices, before the real value of Napa County really rose. These facilities went into place. And I want to recognize that the owners of this company are remarkable community members and have been here for a long time, providing many benefits to the community. And I don't want to disparage that. But the reality of these physical locations compromises everybody else's investment here by the risk to our water quality, by the locations where water flows through, and catastrophic events can happen when there are alternatives. There are other companies that provide alternatives. This was something that our community was never really told about. And I was recently chastised a bit for talking to other companies, not to seek a bid, but to find out what was available to us. What are the best options for the future? We know that there are companies that have a larger economy of scale that can operate these operations in places that are less environmentally sensitive or sensitive to a community. We have never asked those questions because this has never been open to bid, and it has never been open to other companies coming in and showing us better ways. That's why we have competitive bidding, particularly with government services. We were told that there's no value to having contracts here or doing the service here, that no other company would be interested. Well, what I found out is that companies, larger companies, do service smaller areas all up and down the coast. Smaller communities use services that actually take the waste as far as places like the Lockwood landfill near Reno. And the vehicle miles traveled are offset by the economies of scale of how they manage their waste streams, shooting for zero waste. And so there are ways to do this. And if we're looking at our climate window of 9 years, we've got to do everything we can. And I believe we can't just look at history or the tradition or the status quo of what we've always done. We have to open our eyes to the fact that we need to look at changes. And that most likely will involve competitive bidding. And that's what has not existed here. And so it brings up the concerns of monopoly, that decisions made only and by default benefit one company that's never been questioned in 60 years about their practices. In the last review period that has come up, and since that period, let me just read. This is what's occurred. Some of the things. There was an employee death. There were numerous lawsuits, including a lawsuit with the city of St. Helena. Unregulated radioactive waste stored at the facility for nearly a year, and that's under the new management. A chemical explosion before that in 2019, I believe, that hospitalized a worker. Dozens of fires, contamination of the Napa River that directly irrigates our Napa Valley, many of our Napa Valley grape vineyards. We don't have to keep going down this path. There are alternatives that I believe we need to explore. And what I'm trying to say is that both of these facilities bring a fire risk because waste becomes fuel with heat and pressure. And so we're putting a fire risk into the middle of our valley and in a high fire tier area on the north side when we don't have to do that. We don't have to take that chance. We don't have to take the chance there'll be a catastrophic leachate failure as there was when the Napa River was closed for over a month or roughly a month. That's the river that serves our community, both in terms of feeding our aquifers and supporting our grapes. We don't have to do that. I've tried for a year and a half to have a reasonable conversation at every board that I could get to, and I keep getting shut down and trying to have a conversation that I believe is rooted in logic. We don't have to have the fire risk. We don't have to have the risk to our water. And there's also the aspects of community or employee health and safety. If we're working and taking in competitive bids, we may see a company that can provide all these things. There's concerns. I put together a packet that had some information from the EPA. And if we compare what the EPA's recommendations are, there are many areas where what we have here is not really moving in that direction. And so if we look at how do we protect the employees, how do we protect the community, I believe we need to open this up to third-party bidding and recognize that a lack of competitive bidding has led to a breakdown in oversight. And if we look to the future, one of the things that was mentioned at the March 15th meeting was that there's not much change in the Upper Valley. Well, frankly, Upper Valley has been approving in Calistoga and St. Helena new hotels. There are many new winery developments. We've got RENA numbers for many homes that are coming. All those are going to produce more waste. And we're sending it up to the top of our water resource area. And I'm trying to make an analogy saying it's as if Disneyland decided for the next 25 years, they're going to take all the waste and keep it in the park. And we need to rethink this because we have an opportunity to move into the future. And I don't want to be punitive or I don't want to make anybody feel like we can't find a good optimistic solution here, but we have to rethink this because we're going to contaminate our own living area. Our indigenous tribes knew instinctively, intuitively, they didn't need an expert to tell them, you don't put your waste upriver from where you live. We live in the Napa Valley, in Napa County, some of the most remarkable land in the world. And yet we're not thinking about where we're putting our waste. And I think we need to rethink that. And I'm going to wrap up here in just a moment, but I think that the aspects of competitive bidding, opening this up, we know also that there are some inherent conflicts that can occur when somebody's both the hauler and the landfill operator, that there may not be enough incentives for best practice. So all these aspects, I think we can look at. I'd like to look at it in a way of all working together and say, let's open our eyes to a better solution. And if there are companies out there that can offer an economy of scale, we can just say for the climate, for our climate issues, let's do everything we can, step away from older models that might not work and move into the future. So that's what I'm asking us to consider is bringing in a third-party audit and competitive bidding. And I'd like this meeting hopefully to lead to that. So I will leave it at that. If there are other comments from the council.